Hey students, welcome to the second section of Mission 2 where we'll be talking about tissues. We had a brief one about cells, and remember when you have a bunch of cells working together, then you have what are called tissues. So let's go through these. This first video is going to look at one type of tissue called epithelial tissue. Okay, there's lots of different kinds of epithelial tissue. And this diagram you have in your digital notebook has this picture. Now, epithelial tissue can be organized by or labeled by if it has one layer or many layers, or then it can be classified by the shape of the cell. So in this simple group here, that's epithelial tissue that just has one layer of cells. If it's stratified, it means it has two or more layers of cells. That word stratify means layer. So you've got layers on top of layers, and that's why it's called stratified. Now, the shape of the cell can be flat, and this is called squamous, and you see they're flattened. Cuboidal, they're shaped like a cube. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then columnar, shaped like columns. These are the same labels that you saw up here. It's just that you have more than one layer, so they are stratified. Okay, so let's look at simple ones first. Simple squamous tissue is a single flat layer of cells that is thin, and I need to fix that typo, and permeable, and it involves rapid diffusion because the cells are so flat and there's only one layer, so things can get in and out of the cells quickly. And so you would find these in blood vessels and also lung tissue. It's very important to have rapid diffusion in the blood to get oxygen in and CO2 out, and then for lungs to get oxygen in from the outside. Simple cuboidal is a single layer of cube-like cells. They secrete and absorb substances, and they are found in the tissues of the kidney. The square shape allows them to be very organized so that they can get secretion and absorption happening rapidly. Then simple columnar is a single layer of tall cells. They may have cilia and should be goblet cells to secrete mucus, and they are found in the digestive tract. We'll talk more about those at that point, and there's a reason why they are column-shaped. Your stratified squamous tissue has thick layers for protection, and this is found in the epidermal layer of the skin. So all of these layers stacked on top of each other are what make up the epidermis, which is the outer layer of your skin. We'll talk more about this in the skin unit. Stratified cuboidal, often two layers of cuboidal cells. It's pretty rare to find this. You typically only find it in the salivary and mammary gland tissue. And then finally, columnar. Stratified columnar is columnar cells on free surfaces, and it's also rare, found in the larynx, which is your voice box, and also the urethra in the male. There's a couple of epithelial tissues that kind of have a random shape, and so that's what pseudostratified is. So you notice it's not a straight layer, and it looks like it's more than one, but it's actually only one layer of cells that are kind of squished together. So the cell nuclei would look like they're at different levels, but they're really not. The function of those is secretion and absorption, and it's found in the upper respiratory tract. Transitional tissue also varies in appearance, but this usually happens in an area where you need a lot of stretch, or there's transition between one tissue and another tissue. A great example of this is the lining of the bladder. You know how you have to pee and then you're like, oh, I can't go right now. I got to wait a little bit. So your bladder is going to stretch as it fills up with urine. And having this transitional type tissue really helps the bladder do that. Also part of epithelial tissue is the glands. And we have lots of different kinds of glands in our body. The main one we'll focus on at this point is exocrine glands because they secrete substances that are not into a tube, just out in the open, is an exocrine. Like your exoskeleton of an animal is a skeleton on the outside. of the body. So an exocrine gland just secretes the substance outside of a tube, just out there. It's like if you vomit and throw up, you're just vomiting out in the floor. That would be like an exocrine gland. And there are three kinds depending on how they do this. The merocrine glands the cell secretes or excretes the product through a process called exocytosis. So you have the substance here, these little dots. They'll gather towards one surface of the cell, and these substances fuse with the membrane and just dump themselves out. An example would be the sweat glands. The apocrine glands get rid of their substance by a portion of the cell pinching off with the product that's in it. So it gathers here, it starts pinching, and whatever little container that has those substances, it dissolves and just dumps out the substance. And this would be, apo means tip because it forms a tip at one end of the cell and then dumps it off. An example is the mammary gland. This is the gland that produces milk in a pregnant and nursing mother. The other one is holocrine, and this is where the cells rupture and spill their product into the duct. And that root word "hol" means whole, so the whole cell just ruptures and dumps itself in there. You don't have a piece of it coming off like the apocrine. The whole cell just ruptures and dies. An example of this is a sebaceous or an oil gland. These are the three exocrine glands. The other kind of gland is called an endocrine gland, and we will study those in detail in another mission. But these secrete hormone into the blood, and the cells are packed tightly together with capillaries running through the tissue so that those hormones can get into the blood. And just a few examples, thyroid and pancreas. Okay, so that's the end of the epithelial tissue video. So you'll be stopping here and answer that one question, a couple of questions in Edpuzzle, and then the next video will cover the connective tissue.